All right, let's jump right in. Today we're taking a deep dive into what analysts are calling a militarized dynasty in Uganda. We're going to break down a report that looks at how one family's grip on power, the military, and the state itself have become, well, dangerously tangled.
Wow, okay, so this quote really just lays it all out, doesn't it? The key word there is merger. We're not just talking about politics as usual here. The analysis we're digging into today makes the case that in Uganda, the lines between the ruling family, the nation's army, and the government, they're all blurring into something new, and frankly, pretty alarming.
So who is the face of this whole situation? The analysis puts one man right at the center of it all, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, and he happens to be the son of Uganda's long-serving president. So if you really want to get what's happening to the country, we have to start by understanding his story.
Okay, so how do you even begin to unpack all of this? Well, the analysis suggests we look at it from two different angles. First, how exactly the general got so much power inside the military, and second, what his own words, often blasted out in very public tweets, tell us about how he plans to use that power.
In this slide, this really breaks it down, doesn't it? On the left, you've got what a professional army is supposed to look like. You climb the ladder based on merit, your experience, and being held accountable. But on the right, you see what the analysis describes as Muhoozi's path. That traditional ladder is pretty much gone. It's been replaced by loyalty to family and his identity as the president's son. The implication is crystal clear. Loyalty to family has trumped loyalty to the state.
And this is where that power really hits the pavement. For years, he was in charge of the Elite Special Forces Command, the SFC. Now, on paper, their job is to protect the president. But according to civil society groups and opposition figures, they've turned into something else entirely, a kind of political enforcement squad, used to silence anyone, not just security threats, but any civilian who dares to criticize the regime.
So you'd think a top general would be, well, pretty buttoned up in public, right? Disciplined, formal. Well, the analysis we're looking at shows how General Muhoozi has basically thrown that entire playbook out the window. He uses social media in a way that's, well, it's both shocking and incredibly revealing.
First off, just look at the tone he takes. The source points out that he openly and often mocks his political opponents on a public platform. Just think about that for a second. A four-star general whose job is supposed to be above politics is getting into partisan fights online. That's a huge break from the idea of a professional military.
And it gets much, much deeper than just, personal insults. The source highlights statements where he seems to be saying that military power is what really matters, more than the democratic process. He's implying that elections, well, they might not be the final say on who's in charge.
And this is where the source material says it all comes together. The message being sent is that civilian politicians are only in power because the army allows them to be. According to this analysis, this is the point where it stops being just reckless talk on social media and starts sounding like a direct threat to democracy itself.
But here's the crucial question. Are these just words? Does this all just stay online? The analysis argues no, not at all. These words, allegedly, are backed up by some very real, very brutal action, creating a painful price for anyone who dares to speak out. Let's talk about a specific person, an author named Kikwenza Ruhirabashaija. He's known for his satirical writing that's often critical of Uganda's first family. The report we're looking at says that right after he posted some critical comments about General Muhoozi online, he was arrested.
And what happened next is, well, it's brutal. After being detained, Kikwenza reported that he was severely tortured, and medical reports later backed up his claims. The source argues the message here was designed to be unmistakable. If you criticize the president's son, you won't get a debate, you'll get pain.
The analysis points to another really chilling tactic, something it calls violence by association. The idea is pretty simple. If you can't get to your main political target, you go after the people around them to create terror. This is shown through the case of Eddie Mutwe, a bodyguard for the famous opposition leader Bobi Wine. Mutwe wasn't a politician himself, but his connection made him a target.
He reported being violently arrested, severely beaten, and held without any due process. So what's the goal here? Well, according to the analysis, the strategy is to build a wall of fear around opposition leaders, making it physically dangerous for anyone, even their own staff, to be associated with them.
And you might be thinking, okay, this is all happening to high-profile political figures. But it doesn't stop there. The analysis shows this violence reaches ordinary people too. It brings up reports of fishermen being killed or wounded by soldiers during lake patrols that are often just explained away as routine regulation enforcement. It suggests a climate where military force can be turned on anyone for pretty much any reason.
So all of these stories, the author, the bodyguard, the fisherman, they all lead to one huge, glaring question. Why does this stuff allegedly keep happening over and over again? The source's answer boils down to one powerful concept: impunity.
Yeah, this is the big one, right? With all these reports and serious allegations, why does it seem like no one ever faces any consequences? The analysis we're exploring argues that this isn't an accident or just an oversight. It's actually built right into the system. The analysis defines impunity pretty simply. It's the absence of accountability. But here's the kicker. The argument isn't that this is a flaw in the system or something that happens by mistake. No, it's presented as a deliberate structural tool, a feature, not a bug, of how the state governs.
And you can see right here how that system of impunity is allegedly held up. The analysis says Parliament is too scared to challenge the military. The courts almost never will against them. And the silence from the president's office on all this is basically seen as a green light to continue. The result? Officers who are implicated in abuse often get promoted, not punished.
So you have to ask, what's the end game here? Where is all of this heading? What's the long-term goal? The source ties it all together under a name that's pretty hard to forget: the dynastic project.
The analysis points to this widespread belief in Uganda that all of this is building towards one thing: a transfer of power from father to son. It would be a hereditary succession. And if you look at it through that lens, all the intimidation and violence we've talked about, it's not random. It's seen as a systematic campaign to clear the path for this succession, crushing any potential resistance before it can even start.
And this brings us to the absolute core warning laid out in the source material. History has shown us this time and time again. Using a politicized army might prop up a specific leader or regime for a little while, but in the long run, it does deep, lasting damage to the stability of the entire nation.
So when you boil it all down, why does any of this matter? It's about a fundamental choice for a country. On one hand, you have a nation built on strong institutions, accountability, and the rule of law. And on the other, a nation held together by force and fear. The analysis concludes that while fear might work for a time, it can never, ever be the foundation for a stable and prosperous country.
We're going to leave you with this final, pretty heavy thought from the source material we've explored today. It's a stark reminder, really, about the long arc of history and the fact that how you hold on to power leaves wounds that never truly go away.